we set out to do was to see whether we could learn anything interesting and possibly useful in policy and practical terms from reviewing the experience of key political leaders about how they understood their own situations and how they exercised the craft of transition making. Our underlying goal is to develop insights useful for those who want to undertake, to support, and or to understand and report on prospective transitions, those which might occur in places around the world from Myanmar to Venezuela and many places in between. We have in mind as our primary audiences political and civil society actors, governmental and NGO leaders, international organizations, the media, scholars, and students. Gee, I wish I could learn something from the people who succeeded. Well, they're not going to get it out of reading that academic literature. On the other hand, if you offered them, and they don't have the time and inclination to read a great deal, but if you were to have a conversation with them and say, well, I work for the XYZ institution, and we're in a position to bring successful practitioners of transition making from around the world to come to your office here in Tunis or here in Caracas or wherever. And you can spend 5 or 6 hours with each of them, and you can ask them anything you want about their experience. Would you take the time? Well, surely the answer to that is yes. Just perform that mental experiment. It's not hard to realize that they would be fascinated by that opportunity. But it's impractical to parade all these people to every place in the world where it might be useful to hear their insights. So, at the initiative of International IDEA, an intergovernmental organization based in Stockholm that some of you may know, at their initiative, we did the second best thing. Instead of parading these people around the world going from country to country, we went to them. We conducted well-prepared interviews. We invested a lot of time in being well-prepared to ask really good questions specific to each case. We did not apply a simple questionnaire. We engaged the leaders in dynamic conversations intended to draw from them what we could learn from their experience, and therefore are able to present that wisdom in a form that is easily accessible and transportable around the world. That the 9 transitions we reviewed were not, in fact, easy or inevitable. They were surprising, not expected. They were not quick, but protracted. They had their ups and downs, zigzags and reverses. They were complex, uneven, and imperfect. And yet they were meaningful and important. They changed the nature and rules of politics in their various countries, the distribution and exercise of power, in ways that took hold and have lasted. So we think it's worth considering what can be learned from how that was done. The heart and soul of the book is the direct testimony of the 13 presidents and prime ministers, often in their own terms and voices, with vivid and telling anecdotes in great detail. Countries with very different backgrounds, kinds and degrees of authoritarian or exclusionary rule, political experience and institutions, and international relationships. But we did come to realize that these processes of transformation, different as they are, pose recurrent and predictable challenges at each of 4 broad phases: preparing the ground for transition, ending the authoritarian regime, making and managing the transfer of power itself, and stabilizing and institutionalizing the emerging democracy. At each of these 4 stages, characteristic dilemmas and challenges arose, different in detail from case to case, but structurally very similar. And the role of leadership was to understand, sort out, and face those challenges. But by way of conclusion, let me just give a flavor of a few of the main points we discussed, based on reflections about the interviews, considering them in comparative terms, and promising you that the interviews themselves are a lot more interesting than our distillation. We were impressed that successful leaders of democratic transitions moved forward incrementally, making many compromises to achieve forward motion. Compromises that disappointed many of their supporters. They did not expect to achieve all their aspirations quickly.